The superstars of Fan Controlled Football Season 2.0 are not only the who's who of celebrity team owners and influencers, not the 21 million live views of our Emmy-nominated broadcast. Across Twitch, DAZN, Fubo, NBCLX, Peacock. Or our highlights that scored over 100 million views. And we can't forget best-in-class sponsors. But the biggest star of Season 2 is our play calling app that allow fans to control the action on the field. Fans pick a team, pick a play, 4 run plays, 4 pass plays to choose from. The play with the most votes is called in real time.
We got it.
This is where video games and live action come to life. And now, Fan Controlled Sports and Entertainment brings you Fan Controlled Hoops, where fans call the shots. Coming 2023, the future of sports is here, and it's Fan Controlled. Power to the fans.
Are you ready for it?
This is FCTV, Fan Controlled Television. Programs created and produced for the fans, by the fans of Fan Controlled Sports and Entertainment. As always, power to the fans. And now, it's time for the show.
All right. Hey, fans, welcome to the Sweet 16 Pick Show. It's your host, Leighton Batiste, also known as Fan Controlled Lei, here for Fan Controlled Sports and Entertainment. Again, the guys who are typically here for Fan Control Show this week, they're out on vacation. Some of them needed a break, so they said, hey, Leighton, come through. Can you do a really dope show for us? So I said, hey, let's do a Sweet 16 Pick Show. Of course, you all know that a couple weeks ago on Instagram, we had our fans help build our bracket. So this is definitely a check-in. Look, we all know all of our brackets are busted, but it's Sweet 16 finally. So this is a chance for us to just talk about some of the key matchups that are coming up in the tournament tonight. I mean, we have some great games. So there's the Thursday night games and there's the Friday night games. But tonight we've got some key matchups. Okay, we're looking at UCLA Gonzaga, Tennessee versus Florida Atlantic, Arkansas versus UConn, and Michigan State versus Kansas State. So what we're going to do today, again, we're going to analyze all of these Sweet 16 matchups. We're going to talk about who are the key players in these matchups, what's the over-under, give some spreads. But we also, in the comment section, we want you all to tell us what's your pick. And we'll also have 3 super fans here to help us break down not only today's games, but we'll talk about tomorrow's games. So as we get started here, again, a couple weeks ago, to start off the tournament, we had the fans reach out and we say, okay, help us build our bracket. So we're going to go through what the fans said, and then we'll talk about the actual tournament, right? So, of course, we had teams like Alabama making it to the Final Four, Houston making it to the Final Four, Marquette, and Kansas. Well, we already know that 2 of those teams are already knocked out the tournament. So we only have Alabama and Houston left. Both of them play in the Sweet 16 group of 2 matchups tomorrow. Alabama taking on San Diego State. And then we have a big one between Houston and Miami, the 1 seed versus the 5 seed. But we had a couple shockers on the way here, right? Of course, the potential Cinderella at one point was Farley Dickinson, and then they were knocked out the tournament. Their coach just got the Iona job because Rick Pitino just picked up the job over at St. John's. And then next, Farley Dickinson's coach is right there at Iona. But the real Cinderella is Princeton, which is surprising. But we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about that matchup tomorrow. And then, of course, Purdue getting knocked out in the first round. That was really the biggest story leading up until today. We had Memphis making it to the second round, but they were knocked out in the first round by one of the teams we're going to talk about today in Florida Atlantic. So, of course, this tournament has been a shocker. All of our brackets are busted, but it doesn't mean we're going to tune out of this tournament. So, again, we have our super fans in here today. They're going to talk to us about our matchups, and then we're going to go through. But in the chat real quick, just drop in who did you have in your Final Four? I want to see what the fans have. Is your team still in the bracket? But drop those in the chat for me, and then we will go ahead and get this show started. And, of course, just want to pub a lot of our other shows on Fan Control Sports TV. Okay, we have Info Arcade. Tap in with those guys. Definitely want to tap in with Don't Cause a Ruckus. And, of course, usually tonight at this time segment is the Fan Control Show. But I'm in place. So if you're shocked, again, Leighton Batiste, your host. All right, and so we have a hand raised in the chat there, Blackthorn Asylum. Want to say what's up to our fans there. Again, comment. This is an interactive show. Y'all know how we do things at Fan Controlled Sports. here. So again, this is our Sweet 16 pick show. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go through tonight's games again. All right, so Freddie, our guy Freddie Airmail is in the chat. Yes, all right. One of the biggest fans I was expecting for today. So he says I had 10 different brackets with 10 different Final Fours. All right, so hey, Freddie, feel free to drop in some of those Final Fours in the chat, and we'll definitely highlight them. But again, what we're looking at tonight, the first game we're going to analyze, and we're going to have one of your favorite people in Fan Control Sports here on the show. That's David Handler, Mr. Fan Control Sports himself. And we're going to talk about the UCLA Gonzaga game. So just kind of give you these stats leading up. First off, the spread is at -1.5. We're looking at an over-under 145 points. And both teams, again, are fairly strong right now. I had, in my personal bracket, I had Gonzaga winning the national championship. So I'm definitely looking at this one. But I can understand why it's over under 145 points. When you look at UCLA, they're averaging about 74.1 points per game, and then Gonzaga's at about 85. So it should be, on paper, Gonzaga should be able to best UCLA in this game. But I think UCLA has some veteran talent, and of course, just the heat with the history between the two programs and their tournament upsets and back and forths should give us the kind of Sweet 16 matchup that we're all looking for, right? The next big matchup, like I mentioned earlier, Florida Atlantic taking on Tennessee. I think what we need to look for in this game is that, look, Florida Atlantic, they're big on three-pointers, but they are a smaller team. Tennessee's coming in, great defense on the perimeter, but they also have 4 guys starting that are 6'6" and taller, and that could be a problem for Florida Atlantic, which is a smaller team. So that's going to be an interesting thing to look for in tonight's game. Of course, we have UConn and Arkansas. So I'll tell you this. Some UConn fans told me to not bet on UConn. They told me don't even expect them to get out the first round. Shows what kind of season they had up there in the Big East, but they're here in the Sweet 16. They're taking on a very fiery team in Arkansas, which, unless you're really keyed in on SEC basketball, you might have unexpected this with Arkansas. They were one of the teams last year when Alabama made waves, even last year in basketball. Arkansas was the one team that gave Bama problems. So we were kind of expecting this, but that should definitely be a good game for tonight. And then, of course, the first game. So we're doing these in backwards order, but the first game starting at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time tonight, it's Kansas State versus Michigan State. And I think the biggest thing around that game is Tom Izzo's back. He's back in the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2019. So can he work some Izzo magic and get the Spartans, out the Sweet 16 into the Elite Eight and then into the Final Four and hopefully into the national championship? But Kansas State, they're repping the Big 12 hard. The Big 12 has definitely improved their profile as far as the caliber of basketball that they're playing. They're a tough team. They were expected to lose to Kentucky, and they still came out that game, I think, with a 6-point win. So they're coming in tough on this one. So we should have some really good matchups for tonight, but we're going to go ahead and jump into these matchups with our first game. Again, going back to UCLA and Gonzaga. So like I said, we have our first guest in the studio with us, and that is Mr. Fan Control Sports himself, David Handler. Let's invite him on the show.
Hey.
Yeah, what's up, David?
What's going on, fans? What's going on? Mr. Fan Control Lei, what's going on?
I'm good, man. We should get your name switched to Fan Control David, or you just good with just David?
Fan Controlled Hand or
Fan Controlled Hand?
No. Fan Controlled David. Can I change it?
Okay. No. All right, so I think this was a big one. Like I mentioned earlier, dude, I had Gonzaga winning the national championship in one of mine, but you're definitely you're an LA guy.
All right.
No, you're an LA guy. We went to funny story. I think we went to a Braves Dodgers game, right? And you were like full-fledged Dodgers gear right there here in Atlanta. So of course you're here repping UCLA. So the biggest thing is, one, I just want to give you the floor. Explain, what are you seeing with UCLA? What can fans expect? And we'll start with there. So just go ahead, share us with your points on UCLA.
Yeah, of course. You got to start with Jaime Hawkins. I know he's averaging, 17, 18 the last 10 games or so. I think one of the things I realized within this game is really the transition for both these teams. Truly, I know they're both high-paced teams that score the ball. So one thing I would say, I think Tiger Campbell, UCLA point guard, is a big thing. The way I've been watching him for a couple of years, so kind of seeing how he's able to push the ball. I think the freshman, Amari Bailey, is really important. I think he's someone that could put up potentially 20 points tonight. I know they have a guy that's missing in Jalen Carter. So there's been kind of, a lot of talk within, I don't know, I guess analysts in regards to UCLA and their, missing of Jalen Carter. But I definitely think that, Jaime Hawkins, of course, Tiger Campbell, how he pushes the ball. Those two guys specifically have been here. They were there at the Final Four. They've played this game. They've played in big games, in the Pac-12. And then I think Amari Bailey is someone, as a freshman coming in who was a top recruit who really could kind of put up a lot of numbers for this game tonight.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. I think another player, so we'll backtrack on some of the players, but UCLA is going to potentially be out with Adembona, who's a big, sophomore big for them. He's doing really well. If I'm not mistaken, he was leading in rebounds. So that could affect them. But you mentioned Tiger Campbell, which could be the difference maker for UCLA as far as a veteran player. I think the biggest thing about UCLA that fans should be interested in is their field goal percentage, right? They're 48.1% from field goal, which is actually less than Gonzaga. Gonzaga's around 62.1%. So that could be a cause for concern.
Correct.
But UCLA is almost perfect from the free throw line.
Right.
They were, who was it? Tiger himself, he was 12 of 12.
Right.
And they're saying, it's probably been one of the best showings in a while from a UCLA player. So just kind of want you to talk a little bit more about that. I mean, how important are free throws going to be for UCLA tonight?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm interested to see, you kind of brought up how the bigs guard Drew Timme, his versatility as a basketball player, and just seeing, there's someone was saying something earlier. I was watching, I think it was Michael Wilbon, and he said something in regards to, Timmy's the type can put a left hook over his right shoulder. And I definitely think, seeing how the bigs for UCLA can guard him, seeing how they can potentially contain him. I mean, they said some of them have played them before. But I mean, free throws, look, they say it's free, right? And that's a cliche statement, but I definitely think that, late games coming down the line, free throws are going to be very important, and hopes, listen, Tiger Campbell's 12 for 12. So being able to have him control the ball potentially and, be someone who gets fouled and is able to, make 2 free throws in late game or late time, I think really is critical. So, free throws, like you said, I know, field goal percentage is a little bit lower than Gonzaga's, but as a whole, late games, that field goal percentage is definitely going to be important.
No, and that's true. I think looking at Freddie Airmail here, he brought up a really good point about, so he says when you adjust for their schedule, UCLA actually has a pretty low tempo game. But if they can kick it up, Gonzaga's defense might not be able to keep up. So that's interesting because not a lot of folks are necessarily talking about how fast paced UCLA is.
Right.
And also, look, on paper, Gonzaga looks like the better team, but I think we need to talk about their conference, right?
Correct.
You talk about the competition in the Pac-12 compared to the competition in the West Coast Conference.
Right.
Could that be a difference maker in this game?
I saw something. Gonzaga's non-conference, right? I think they beat Alabama earlier in the year. I know they've had where was it? Let's see here. It was something regarding their non-conference just kind of being, here we go. So while it may not seem as an aggressive schedule, Gonzaga has taken down Alabama, Xavier, and Michigan State this season. 3 of
so
them
they're battle tested.
Right, exactly. So, they're the type of team, like, I remember, what was it? Michigan State, Gonzaga used to play in that San Diego, play on that, on that big ship, at the beginning of the year to start off the season and things like that a few years back. So point being is, though their conference is necessarily not as aggressive as like a Pac-12, they are battle tested. They play big non-conference games. So it's kind of balanced in my opinion. Pac-12, your day-to-day grind, the USCs, Oregons, Arizona State, but then you go back and against Gonzaga and, non-conference, they kind of have that tough road. But it's interesting to point that out, though, because if the later half of your season is all your conference folks and, you got St. Mary's and things like that, but if you're not really playing that high-level competition, then sometimes going into the tournament after the conference tournament, who knows if you have those kind of pitfalls if you're not playing this tough competition.
No, that's true. And Freddie Airmail, again, one of our super fans here, bring up a good point that, Gonzaga's non-conference schedule, strength of schedule is ranked 12th of 363.
Right.
I was reading an article. I wanted to know, because we're talking realignment, right, in college sports.
Right.
And although we usually talk about it for football, it affects basketball. So I was wondering, well, why is the Pac-12 not looking at Gonzaga? And someone wrote that, well, when you look at West Coast Conference, the top 4, they're just as good, if not better than the top 4 in the Pac-12. So would the competition really change for Gonzaga? Would it really affect them to go to the Pac-12, or does it benefit them to continue to dominate this conference, to get into the playoffs? So I thought that was definitely an interesting point, and I'm glad you brought that up. That there's really a lot of balance between these two teams, regardless of conference.
Correct. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, Mark Few and the Gonzaga coaching staff and just Gonzaga as a whole, they're going to recruit the best players, right? And people are going to want to play there. So it it's different football versus basketball, right? Gonzaga, I don't think they even have a football team.
No.
Yeah, and so I think the point is that you're always going to get those top players that go to Gonzaga no matter what. You get one and dones and things like that. But at the same time, you're going to have a Drew Timme who's going to be there for the 4 years. He's going to, capture his NIL money and
right.
Like that. But I think it's important to know that, like you said, do you take the overall conference as a Pac-12 as a whole, who might get more funding than the West Coast Conference? Or is it something that, Gonzaga just stays there, continue to dominate? They're always a top, 3 seed. And then, so I don't know. It's really interesting to kind of see that, and knowing that we've talked so much about football, but knowing how some of these realignments do affect basketball.
Right. And I wanted to bring this up. So going back to Gonzaga's last game against TCU.
Yeah.
What was interesting is that TCU was up 5 at the half.
Right.
And then Gonzaga comes out and just puts 51 on the board and wins the game. So how important will the veteran leadership of UCLA be specifically in the second half of this game?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I definitely think like both these teams are battle tested, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's this year as a whole, whether it's previous seasons, they have, in a sense, when we say veteran leadership in college basketball, I mean, a sophomore, a junior. But I think that second half coming out, it is really important. I mean, because like you said, I like, who's a good player for Gonzaga. What's his name? Julian Straymore.
Yeah.
I think he's a good player as well. I think he's someone that brings a lot of energy. I know he's put up some buckets before. So it's tough because you come out the second half, right? I mean, there's natural times where you just come out cold, right? It could be a mindset thing. It also could be a comfortability thing. If you are up, by 12 in the first half, it could be something where you take the foot off the gas. So I don't know. I think it's going to be really important to see how balanced this game is. And I do think that, the halftime mark is important.
Yeah.
But I don't see there being like a major shift within the mindset of UCLA if they were up, let's say 14, or if they were down 14. They're going to be able to push the ball, and it might slow down the game right in the second half. Like you said, they could push it up if they really wanted to, but if they want to slow down the game, then they can. So I think the tempo of the game will really be determined on, I'm not going to say by Tiger Campbell, but I think more so on the UCLA side.
Right. And so then knowing that this is a heated rivalry when it comes to tournament, how much do you think that's going to play in it? Or do you think these guys are approaching this as, hey, this is our game. What happened before doesn't matter?
That's a good point. It's a little bit of both, right?
Yeah.
I think Tiger Campbell and Jaime Hawkins have that little bit in the back of their head, like, hey, look, we have to win this game. But I think at the end of the day, you want to create your own legacy in each game. So
right.
You can't completely be focused on what happened 2 years ago because, both those guys were different players. And Drew Timme was a different player too, I think. So I would say that you think about it, but when you're locked in, focused on the game ahead, you're not focused on, the Final Four from 2 years ago. It's
right.
This is because if you lose this game, then you're gone and you don't even make it to the Final Four.
Right.
That's
a good point. So before I let you go, man, of course we got to do some. Say that again?
I don't know if you see there's a question in the chat. Is Gonzaga the Notre Dame of basketball? And I think that's a really good question.
I think they are. I agree.
I
mean, we don't talk about the West Coast Conference as a perennial conference.
Right.
So it almost feels like they're out there on their own.
Correct.
Instead of really being a part of a conference, but they're so dominant,
Yeah.
So they definitely are. I would say they fare better in basketball than Notre Dame has recently done in football. Different sport, obviously.
Yeah,
but before I let you go, of course, I've got to do some over-unders here. So knowing that UCLA averages 74.1 points per game, Gonzaga's at 87.3. The current over-under is 145. So are you taking the over or the under?
I'm taking the over.
Okay. All right.
Over. I'm pushing for the high-scoring game. I don't know. It comes to like my mindset of just being an offensive player, being a quarterback. Like points was always in my mindset, right? So I would say that I've always been focused on wanting to see high-scoring games. I think this is one that is more so high-scoring, but that's just me kind of talking out of what I want to see. But I'm not gonna bet. But if I did, I'd just take the over.
Okay, all right. I think I'm gonna go ahead and take the over. Like I said, in my bracket, I need Gonzaga to win, but I know you want your Bruins to take this one. All right, man. Well, then look. Enjoy the game tonight. I know we all are, but want to thank you again, man. You've been a great guest, and I agree with Jay Spacely. Hey, look, we're looking for a boo this man moment, but we're spitting facts. So appreciate it, David, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
So again, I mean that he brought up some great points, man. Look, UCLA is extremely battle tested. Both teams are. And I think that's kind of the thing that we love about the tournament, right? In football, it's always about, well, strength of schedule as far as, your conference is this. We know we talk about the SEC is better than the ACC and the SEC compared to the Big 12 and then the Big 10. But in basketball, a lot of it's just about battle tested. I agree. I really agree with Freddie Airmail here is that, look, hey, man, Gonzaga got their non-conference out the way. They got it out the way. And a lot of times that benefits basketball teams when they can become battle tested at the start of the season. Iron sharpens iron. And then once they get to the conference, man, a lot of it is just tune-up games for them. Even though, the West Coast is pretty strong. They're about to lose BYU to the Big 12. But overall, I do love that question about, Gonzaga basically being like the Notre Dame of college basketball. So again, that was our first guess. David was great for us. So we're going to move on to our next matchup of the night. And we're right on schedule. It's Florida Atlantic versus Tennessee. So let's get that. Boom. Graphics. All right. Like I mentioned earlier when I opened up this show, the difference is this. Florida Atlantic, they're a 3-point team, right? They are a 3-point team. But you know who defends the 3-point very well? It's Tennessee. And that's going to be a problem because of height as well, right? Tennessee has about 4 of their starters are 6'6" and above. And that could create a lot of problems for Florida Atlantic. Right now, the spread is about -5. Over under is 130. So let's get into this. Florida Atlantic, they're averaging 78.4 points per game. Whereas Tennessee, did I write it down? Tennessee's averaging 71.2. So on paper, Florida Atlantic should beat Tennessee, right? But I think that, I think this is one of those games where the size is going to be the difference maker in this game. Nothing against Florida Atlantic's ability to win. When you look at their track record of how they got here, they beat Memphis out the gate, which I don't know if for you all, but I had Memphis getting pretty deep in my bracket. I can't remember if I had them in the Final Four. I know one of our guests had them in his Final Four. But I was expecting Memphis to get past the Florida Atlantic. They shocked. And then they ran into what we thought was the original Cinderella of the tournament, Farley Dickinson. They handled them very well. So they look good. But this Tennessee team, kind of leaning off of our UCLA Gonzaga conversation, they're battle tested as well. The SEC, the profile of the SEC in basketball has definitely increased. They gave the Alabamas of the SEC, the Missouris, a lot of the top teams a run for their money this season. And I agree, like what Freddie Airmail is saying in the chat. What makes Tennessee significant is they are the #1 team in the country when it comes to defending the 3. And because they're big, it almost sounds like it's going to be impossible for Florida Atlantic to get on the inside and attack the board. So I think that's going to be interesting. Key players for this game, and then we're going to go ahead and get to our next matchup here with our next guest. Look at Janelle Davis. He's averaging 13.9 points per game for Florida Atlantic, and Elijah Martin. He's at 13.1 points per game. So look at them two to lead the Owls tonight. And then over on Tennessee, Santiago Vescovi from Uruguay. So they got a couple international dudes, but 6'3" guard, averaging 12.7 points per game. He had a beautiful 3-pointer in their last matchup when they knocked out Duke. And then look at Olivier Kamwa from Finland. Again, like I said, dude's above 6'6". He's leading the team in rebounds. He's 6'9" forward. So look for these guys. Just when watching this game, look at size. If Florida Atlantic's able to handle and they're able to attack, then we might have a game. But I think Tennessee's defense is going to lock in. So that's really kind of my brief thing here. If I'm going to take the over or under in this game, I almost want to take the under. I think that Tennessee is going to be able to get their 71, almost 72 points, but I think they're going to hold Florida Atlantic to below. I can see Florida Atlantic getting somewhere around 60-something points in this game from Tennessee's defense. That's just my perspective. So I'm going to take Tennessee in this game. All right. So I love looking at this chat. Florida Atlantic is the opposite of battle tested. It would be cool to see them pull off the upset anyway. I agree. And one thing that they should feel confident about, they are the Conference USA champions, right? So they should feel very confident. They won their conference. They won the conference tournament. So they should have some confidence. But overall, I think I'm going to go Rocky Top in this game. All right. I know I got a friend of mine who's a big Tennessee fan. He probably loved hearing me say that. All right. So we're going to get into our next matchup here. It is UConn and Arkansas. So we're going to bring on our next super fan. If you all were on our Instagram live, Malcolm joined us. And he's the guy that ultimately predicted what the fans think is going to be the championship. So let's go ahead and bring Malcolm onto the show. I wish I had like a button to have like claps and like, yay, woo. Like. All right, man. So just a recap real quick for fans who may not know. Again, you led the Instagram live in predicting that Alabama would beat Houston in the national championship 65-60. Do you still feel like that's going to be the outcome?
Right now it's shaping up to be that way. Houston's been playing lights out, doing exactly what everyone expected them to do. Same thing can be said about Alabama. The only thing surprised me, their star, Brandon Miller. He had a rough start to the tournament. Looking to see if he's going to rebound. I know the lights are bright on him. He's probably looking to go to the NBA this year as well. So this is his debut. This is his pro day. I know we have a lot of pro days going on. Speaking of Alabama, Bryce Young had his pro day today.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm interested to see who picks him up.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Conversation.
Yeah, right. We'll talk draft. Trust me, we'll talk draft. All right, man. So look, we're looking at UConn. We're looking at Arkansas. Like I said earlier in the show, I knew some folks who are UConn fans. They said, "Hey, don't expect them to get past the first round." And look, here we are. They're in the Sweet 16. So just quick stuff right now. Over under is at 139.5 points. It's a +4, -4 spread on this game. So their journey here, right? Let's see, because I have mixed up my notes. Arkansas beat Illinois and Kansas on the way here, whereas UConn beat St. Mary's and Iona on the way here. So just brief background there. So I just want to get your thoughts. What are you looking at are the keys to this matchup? And then after that, I'll go into, what team do you think is going to pull out the win tonight?
Yeah, definitely. So for UConn, the keys to the game obviously played through their big. They got a 6'9" junior, Amadas Sanago. I hope I'm saying that right.
Adama Sanogo. I looked it up before the show too. I got you. Yeah.
Adama Sanogo. Yeah. He's been playing amazing. So far, nobody can figure out how to stop him in the paint. Once he gets his feet set back to the basket, he's almost unstoppable down there. He's averaging 17 and 7 this season. And unless you're going to double team in the post or leave somebody like Jordan Hawkins on the wing open, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
As far as Arkansas, their guard trio, actually, not tandem trio. You got Ricky Council, he's a junior, 6'6", Debo Davis, 6'4" junior, and Anthony Black, freshman. Yeah. He's the one that really stood out to me out the three. Of course, Ricky Council, he's providing the scoring punch. Got the junior leadership there. But Anthony Black, he's actually had a steal, if I'm checking my stats right, in every game this tournament. Even, I think, against Illinois, he had 4 in that game alone. So defense is going to be very good for them. Another thing for UConn, their 2 stars I mentioned, Jordan and Adama, they're both also shooting above 35% from the 3. So
scary.
That's a scary 1-2 combo.
Yeah.
So just seeing how they scheme up and, try to limit the impact of each of their role players respectively is going to be a big key to this matchup.
I agree. And one of the common topics, as you heard, battle tested, right? Look, the Hogs, they're fast. They're fast on wings. But UConn has played some fast teams in the Big East. One of them that we thought was going to get here, Marquette. Do you think UConn is prepared for the Hogs, though?
Yeah, I do. So UConn, they've actually seen Marquette twice, just being in the Big East.
Yeah.
They beat them once early in the season, but they lost to them in the tournament. I looked at both teams. Their last loss actually was to Marquette leading up to the tournament on March 10th. For Arkansas, their last loss also came on March 10th to Texas A&M. So both teams upset at the same time. Both have that same similar chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see where they get that motivation from. Speaking of motivation, both coaches, they have a lot of expectations in this game. For UConn, Dan Hurley, he comes from a line of coaches.
Yeah.
His dad is a Hall of Fame coach. I heard him talking in an interview. He said, "It feels like I was raised by Wolves. I'm the perfect coach for UConn." And then you look at the other sideline, you got Eric Mussolini.
Mm-hmm.
He's running around shirtless post game.
Rightfully so, though.
Rightfully so. No one expected them to be here. They just knocked off the defending champ. So the lights are bright. They're stepping up, and they're doing exactly what no one expected them to do.
Right. And you talked about pressure in a way. Both are national championship programs, with UConn having one more in this millennium. But between the two, who has the more pressure on them, do you think?
I would probably say UConn, only because, like you said, no one did expect them to get here. However, you're still fourth in the nation.
Yeah.
That, along with, like, you went 27-8 in overall, 13-7 in the Big East. They don't really have any losses that stand out, outside of the fact that they were 0-4 in one possession games. So, a close game could be bad for them. It would be nice to see if they can get some different leadership somewhere on the bench. Maybe the coach draws from something his dad told him, tells the team. I don't know. But they're going to definitely need some kind of spark somewhere, just to get over that hump, get a lead, and hopefully hold it. But I would say that more pressure is on UConn in this situation to win.
Those are great points, man. My biggest thing that I'm looking for in this matchup, and quite honestly, they look kind of what when you look at the stats. They look very what and what.
I'm sorry, I was reading the comments. Freddie Airmail, Arkansas beat Kansas in March Madness and in the bowl game. The S in Kansas is no longer silent. Great point.
Great point. Freddie Airmail was like super fan, yo. Just super fan greatest. Coming in with the hot takes, man. Yeah, dude, look. The over-under, like I said earlier, is 139.5. Unfortunately, I didn't write down the average scoring of each team. But are you taking the over or are you taking the under in this matchup?
I would have to take the under in this matchup. I saw another stat somewhere. The under this year is like 33-8 comparatively across all the March Madness games so far. That, coupled with the defense of Arkansas, I think it'll be a slow, kind of grinded out game, especially with them trying to feed the ball down low. UConn trying to feed the ball down low in the post. Unless the guards for Arkansas get out and run and transition, what they love to do off of steals, I see this being a low-scoring game, probably somewhere in the 60s. But I would play the under here.
All right, those are great points. And then I think you mentioned it earlier. You're talking about, going back to Sonogo for the Huskies, right?
Yeah.
Again, him on the board. So he's leading the team in rebounds. What's interesting is he's leading in scoring and rebounds on the team. When you looked at a comparison, what player from Arkansas did you see, hey, he's your responsibility, you have to lock him down?
So I was looking at the roster. I didn't see any one player that stood out, and that to me just says it's a team effort.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have to trap. You're going to have to deny him the ball in the post. You're going to have to make them find offense somewhere else. Because, again, once he gets positioned down low and he gets the ball, you're at his mercy.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, sorry there, but you know how NBA fans, we talk about LeBron. Hey, don't key in on him. Eliminate his support.
Right.
Is that the approach you use in this game? If you're Arkansas, is that the approach? Do you key in or do you eliminate his support?
Well, I would say, yeah, key in. But I mean, again, it has to be a combination. But first, I would key in on him, stop him early because they play through him. So if you get them off their rhythm, maybe get a little 8-10 point lead going into the half, or even closer. Like I said, UConn isn't a great team in one possession games down the stretch. That loss that I highlighted for Arkansas, they were up on Texas A&M going into the half, and they let them lead one of arguably the most historic comebacks in tournament play.
Yeah.
Big second half letdown, and they got beat down low. So that right there.
It's surprising because A&M is a pretty big team.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think they had like a 10-point lead at the half or something similar, and they let them play in the post. They got beat down low. They stopped playing their basketball. They got away from playing their brand of basketball, and you could attribute that to coaching. He's still a younger coach himself, Eric, for Arkansas. He doesn't have, again, that lineage or experience in-house. So, adjustments on the fly are something you're learning every day.
So this very well could become less and less about the players on the court and more so about the two coaches.
Right. This is a very even game, in my opinion. Rankings aside, they both saw pretty good, decent competition leading up to this. However, I would say UConn has had an easier road so far.
Mm-hmm.
Their 2 wins came over Iona and St. Mary's. I know you had Iona as a dark horse favorite.
Yeah.
But they handled them well, 87-63.
That's an understatement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very well, actually.
And then again, they beat St. Mary's 70-55. So I would say they haven't been as pushed in this tournament so far. So that alone, I would say, gives Arkansas an edge here in the overall matchup. Because, like, Arkansas, they did just beat the number one.
Yeah.
72-71. Tight game, one possession game. They found a way to pull it out at the end as a team.
Yeah. Which has kind of been the story of Arkansas all year.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to close on this note from Freddie Airmail here. And I'm going to ask you a question. He says, against teams in the current Sagarin top 50, UConn is 10-6 this year, Arkansas 6-9. Knowing that, who do you take in this game?
I would still take Arkansas. I believe tournaments are won mainly off your guard play.
Mm-hmm.
If they can limit the damage Sonoga does inside, I would say Arkansas wins, maybe in a close one possession game.
Nice. All right, man. Look, appreciate you on this synopsis. We're gonna move you back in the studio because we're gonna bring you back for our game talk tomorrow for our 4 games tomorrow. So we're gonna bring you back here. But really appreciate your insight on UConn and Arkansas. Again, everyone, this is one of our super fans, Malcolm Maddox himself out of Atlanta. All right. Okay, so we're going to go right into our next matchup here. The next one, Kansas State versus Michigan State. We're going to bring on another fan guest. He's a sports analyst, huge on the game. So we're going to go ahead and bring in Mr. Roger Diamond II. Let's see if we can get him in the studio. There we go, man. What's up, man?
What's up? How you doing? How you doing?
I'm good. Go ahead. Tell the fans where you're from.
Mobile, Alabama. Currently in Charlotte, and Roll Tide. So
all right. So we already know who's winning on all your brackets, right?
I know exactly. I kind of did a little split because I'm like you. I think Gonzaga has a real chance off the fact that they've been under the radar this season. Usually we look at Gonzaga in every tournament and say, like, okay, is this their year to win? Is this their year to win? They always flame out late. This year they kind of went on the radar and had a good season. So I have one bracket with Gonzaga winning.
Good. So we're on the same page. I mean, I think the reason why I picked Gonzaga, they almost give off the Jay Wright Villanova feel, where like this is a complete team with a really good coach. And those are the kind of teams that, again, they could sneak up on you and win the tournament, if you give them a chance. I think I had them beating Alabama, though. So, sorry. I think they'll get to the Final Four, play Houston. I think they can beat Houston. And I think just their experience as a team sets them up. But that's not the game we're talking about. They're talking about Kansas State, Michigan State. And again, I'm always leaning on Freddie Airmail, as he says, the only game in the Sweet 16 where the seed underdog is favored. So the Spartans. My biggest question for this one, Tom Izzo, right? If I'm not mistaken, it's his first Sweet 16 since 2019.
Yeah, I think that was just that. Yeah.
All right. So does this play a factor in that? Does he play a factor in this at all?
Of course, and I think one thing people, I don't know, they've been mentioning about, this is Jerome Tang's first season, so he's going against a vet when it comes to the X and O's. So that would be interesting to see how that game goes on that side. But I think Tom's going to lean on what he's seen. He's played in many tournaments. I think he broke a record, tied a record for most tournament appearances by a coach with like 25, 26. He's been in tournaments pretty much my whole life. So I think that's going to be interesting to see. I think Tom is going to lean on that. But I think Jerome Tang, he has the confidence. I think Kansas State was in a running that Big 12 conference that kind of had a new that's the team every other week in Kansas State. Kind of been a beautiful story right now, especially with Keontae Johnson and what his background has been with.
Yeah, well, and speaking of Keontae Johnson, I had him listed as one of my key players, scoring 17.5 points per game. He's also leading the team in rebounds. But then on the other side, I had Tyson Walker, 14.8 points per game for Michigan State. Tell me, did you have these players listed as your key players? If not, what players did you say would be the keys to this match?
I would say Keontae, yes. Actually, I was at the Greensboro rounds. I got to saw Kansas State and Montana State play. Keontae Johnson, he's gonna be interesting draft pick whenever he falls. I was talking to my friend at the game. He reminds me of Michael Beasley, who's also at Kansas State.
Great comparison.
He was like a go-getter with the bucket. And the team was kind of in a drought, they looked at him to get a bucket. And I think you're probably gonna see a lot of hero ballers in this game coming up in a little while, especially with Tyson Walker. I think Joey Hauser would be another player I would look at for Michigan State. When it comes to, I know we mentioned earlier, like the stats, they kind of like very similar.
Right, they're really neck and neck.
But they do not shoot the three ball well in the tournament, at least. So I'm only looking at the team who can hit the threes at the right time, at least the most. I love teams that shoot their threes and make them. They always kind of separate you from the team if you can do that. But they're also good at making their free throws, so that'd be interesting. Real teams get into the line and drawing fouls. And I think the biggest player, in my opinion, is Marquise Noel. He was doing his best Magic Johnson impression in the first two games with the behind the back and no looks. And I was at the game, I'm like, who is this guy? He's 5'8", has no fear in him. So I think he's gonna be a big component with that as well. So it's a lot of players out there. So, but I think those are the top four in my opinion.
Even with him being 5'8", do you see him eventually being a good draft pick, or will he be someone that ends up landing in like the G League or going overseas?
It depends. This draft is weird because after maybe like 10, it's like who's out there. I know. We talked about Nick Smith Jr., Brandon Miller. Is Drew Timmy gonna go to the draft? He's gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna just stay at Gonzaga my whole life and get this NIL money, which I would be opposed to. But as we've seen, if players show out in the tournament, they get noticed and they get picked up. So if he keeps showing out and he definitely pulls out against Tom Izzo, I think he'll be a good draft pick.
What's interesting, this is kind of a conversation off topic real quick. I want to throw this at you. In college football, right, we have this issue where players are opting out of bowl games. And I already know what the argument is going to be because of how the game is played. But why don't you think we've seen that yet in basketball where players say, I'm opting out of the tournament?
I think, as we mentioned, we'll talk about Marquise Noel. I think it rises your stock better than anything else doing a meaningless bowl game to whomever that concerned, depending on what bowl game it is. And just the eyeballs out there. You're watching 4 different channels for a lot of games, and one weekend we turn $1 in a couple million.
Right.
Opposed to getting hurt in the bowl game. That doesn't kind of notch or add to your legacy depending on which game you're in. I think it just the stakes are so much higher, and then like overnight you become a celebrity. So I think that's why we don't see that. Just too much of an opportunity and too much you can build off yourself just off a draft run. I mean, NCAA run. Dante DiVincenzo out of nowhere.
Oh, I really wanted the Hawks to draft him. I really did. I got to see him the other night. I mean, straight baller, dude.
Yes.
Yeah. I was really a big fan of him and Brunson at Villanova when they were in school.
Exactly. I think majority of that starting 5 is in the league now, doing great.
Yeah,
crazy.
Well, especially Brunson. I mean,
yes.
All right. So you mentioned 3-point earlier, right? And I want to bring this up because Michigan State, that's their bread and butter, right? 3-pointer. But Kansas State actually has a fairly elite defense on the 3-point. Which one wins? Does the offensive 3-point win in this matchup, or is it going to be the defense?
I think defense is going to be the triumph in this game because the teams are so similar. Who's be the cleanest and who can limit the turnovers or create the most turnovers? That would be the difference of the game, in my opinion. I know I might get ahead of myself. I see an overtime game. We haven't had one yet. I see an overtime game with this first one. It's just too close. The defense is kind of when it comes to scoring defense, hold their teams a little bit under 70 points. They can hit their free throws, but the threes have not been hitting for both teams in the tournament. So I definitely think defense is going to be the biggest key.
So that's your hot take, is that this might be an overtime game.
Yes. Well, time is up, pulling something out the bag and winning.
All right, and then just diving back to the last comment again. Freddie Airmail brought up a great point here. If you're in the tournament, you're in the tournament. Not all bowl games are made equal. Some guys won't add as much to their stock by playing in the lower level bowls. Great point. I mean, it's basically aligned with what you were saying. Of course, with them both, the 2 major college sports, there's always going to be a comparison there. Well, overall, look, man, Kansas State, again, they're averaging 75.5 points. Michigan State's averaging 70.2 points. The over-under is 138. Are you taking the over or the under?
138. I'm going to go with the under.
Even with overtime?
It might kill it. It actually might kill it. We've been seeing a lot of stuff happen at the end, but I think if it's regulation under plus regulation overtime over the over, I think Tom Izzo wants that pizza. I think it was Tyson Walker. He said, like, we going to New York. You're gonna take me to your spot and you're in that pizza. I think Tom Izzo wants that pizza. So yeah,
that makes sense. All right, man. Look, like all of our other guests, you have been great. So again, this is Roderick Diamond II. He's been our analyst for Kansas State, Michigan State. So before we bring Malcolm back into the studio, just going to do kind of a quick PA for the fans. Remember, folks, next Monday, 4 o'clock Eastern time. That's 1 o'clock Pacific. Sorry, my time zones are off. Back to work here. There we go, Jim. Yeah, so Back to Work is live next Monday. Be myself and your favorite host here at Fan Controlled Sports, Josh McCouga. So make sure you all tune in. All right, that was my pub. Now let's bring Malcolm back onto the show as we get into our next segment. Let's talk about Friday's games. All right, so these are our first two matchups. All right, game one, Alabama versus San Diego State. And then we have Houston versus Miami. All right, what do y'all want to talk about first? We want to go Bama, San Diego State, or we want to attack this Houston-Miami game?
Let's talk to Houston-Miami. I think that may be easier to talk
to. Okay. All right, so look, Miami shocked me. I had them losing in the first round. But here they are. They're deep. The women's are doing the same thing in the women's tournament. So, of course, the floor is you all's. We could do it this way. Either I can give each of you a team and y'all can pitch their case, or we could just talk in general about the matchup. How do y'all want to do it? Again, this is Fan Controlled Sports. Y'all are the fans. How y'all want to do this?
I'll take Miami because Isaiah Wong's probably one of my favorite players. In my opinion.
All right, so then what do you think is the key to the game for Miami to win this one?
Stay with Houston. Stay on them. Try to kind of mirror their identity and just pick up on their mistakes. I think a lot of people want to get on Houston because, I think Ralph Sanders talked about in the first round, everybody's hurt. But, nobody cares about that in the day. So, but he's going to make his team work. I think people definitely look for Houston to lose. They was down their last game, but they kind of pulled it out and pulled away. So you have to kind of pretty much play perfect against Houston. You stay with their pace, stay with the rebounding. I think Miami can give them a tough matchup. I think that'll be a close game too.
Agreed. All right, Malcolm.
Yeah, I'm pulling for Houston here. Again, they're the last number one seed in the tournament, I believe.
Alabama.
But outside of but on the game, the spread is 7.5. Houston's an 89.5% favorite, 90%. It's hard to beat. Line is 325 on the money line. Those are good numbers any day.
You gonna bet it?
The way Georgia's set up. But yeah, again, another great team led by a good group of guards. I would say Houston gets the edge here. Just looking at some of their stats now, but yeah, Houston.
All right, so before I kind of act as the deal breaker here, let's look at this chat. So let's see. Is it Dick Willie? Our fans. All right, it says Houston makes stupid mistakes, but they make other teams look stupid as well. All right, so basically it's a comment just about their playing style. Houston has shown a lack of control at times in the game. Do you think that is really going to impact them here? Has Miami shown the ability to take advantage of other teams' mistakes? What are your all's thoughts?
I think so. But then once again, I think it might be another battle of coaches. But around Sampson, he's going to make sure his guys play hard, and he's going to make them correct those mistakes as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Just looking at their roster, looks like they're a fairly younger. They're a younger team led by some juniors and sophomores. So I could attribute that inexperience to the sloppiness. But yeah, again, they do make other teams look a little slow at times, just because of their cohesiveness as a team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, like he's saying, they're so scrappy and pesky on the defensive end. Yeah, I definitely agree. But it's definitely going to be a good game for Miami. Again, they definitely upset a couple people, and again, you can never count on a dark horse.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and say the road stops here for Miami. I don't know what it is. I think I have a vendetta against them. I don't know what it is. I think Houston's going to pull it. I think they're determined to play the Final Four at home, and then once they get there, it's up in the air. Again, on my bracket, I have Gonzaga taking them out in that Final Four matchup. But I'm going to go with Houston for tomorrow's game. So let's go to the game we know we all actually want to talk about, Alabama, San Diego State. So before I get you all's input, Freddie Airmail says, I think Alabama, San Diego State is a closer matchup. San Diego State upsets Alabama. Experience and defense wins. My point. I was at an event, and a guy said, look, if you look at a lot of these, mid-majors, right, the reason why they're taking out some of these top teams is because their rosters are more experienced. These are the teams with guys that have been playing the college game for, 2 to 3 to 4 years. Could that be a factor in this matchup? I'm guessing, Roger, you've already said, look, I'm an Alabama fan. Malcolm, are you leaning Alabama or are you taking San Diego State? How are we doing this?
Again, another game here, 7.5 spread, 345 on the money line. Once again, this one I would bet if I was able in Georgia. We got to get some legislation. Anyway, over under is 137. So they're expecting it to be a lower scoring game. That I could see. However, it all comes down to the stars in this game, in my opinion. Brandon Miller versus, like you said, that experienced group from San Diego State. If he is the Brandon Miller everyone expects him to be, it should be a walk in the park for Alabama. Just another game on the way to the Elite Eight, and Alabama should take this one without too much fuss.
All right, Roger.
I'm gonna be biased, but I think we've seen two different Alabama teams. We've seen one without Brandon Miller pretty much that first game. He made 0 points. Everybody chipped in and did wonderfully. Second game, he bounced back. But the biggest star of the last game was Ron Quinley, which, he came back from injury last tournament. So I think Alabama has the players to battle against, this experience that we're talking about with San Diego State. Everybody plays their role at Alabama. We have people that play crash the boards, play defense. They have the size, they have the speed. I think they can challenge whoever tempo that San Diego State puts out. San Diego State, they flamed out in tournament. I've seen different years, so I don't see why this year is any different personally. I can see Alabama take a win, but I do see it's a close game. But a lot of teams been playing Bama close, so they be keeping some games closer than putting out late. So I see the game at least starting out closely.
Well, it sounds like a clean sweep. I'm going Alabama in this matchup as well. I think that this definitely comes down to star power. I think that I saw that, or one of you said that. I think it comes down to star power for this game. I think Alabama, this team has actually been well built over the years. Knowing, again, if you pay attention to SEC basketball, this isn't something that just started last year per se. It's kind of something that's been in the works. I think their time is now. I'm going to go ahead and say they're going to take San Diego State, but I am interested, like Freddie Airmail with the hot take. Look, San Diego State with the upset. I'm interested to see if it happens. I really am. So we'll all be keyed in on that game. Let's go ahead and get to our second matchups here before we close out this show. Let's see here which games. All right. We got to talk about, obviously, Creighton, Princeton being the true Cinderella of this tournament right now. And then Texas Xavier is a matchup that I saw coming. So let's go ahead and attack Texas Xavier here. Which is the better matchup?
I would say save Cinderella.
All right, cool. All right. So let's go Texas versus Xavier. Who do y'all have in this game, man? I'm kind of liking the story of Texas right now.
Yeah. I had Texas getting this far. I think I had them in one of my brackets even making it to the Final Four. So I definitely expected this matchup. I'm happy to see one of my legs made it on the bracket. But I definitely like what they're doing at Texas, the program overall. They pride themselves on defense. They're a big team this year, size-wise. I don't think Xavier is going to match up well with them position, and that's really going to be what kills them in this game.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a good game overall, just like a good watch. You can't have too many bad games in the tournament, but this will be definitely a good watch, and I think that size and experience coaching staff is going to give Texas the edge here.
Okay, Rod.
I'm like in Texas. I kind of want the dream matchup of Houston and Texas in the Final Four in Houston.
Yeah.
I think that would be good. I like little stuff like that. I think it'd be beautiful to see, but I think it'd be interesting with the Big 12 style of play versus Big East. I think Big East is my my favorite conferences to watch play. But I think Texas, they're too deep, they're too big. So Sean Miller head coach Sean Miller and Xavier have to follow some stuff to keep up with Texas. But I think Texas is taking that way.
I agree.
Yeah, like I said, I had both teams kind of making it this deep. I definitely want that dream Texas. I think I also on one of my brackets. That's why I wanted Baylor to get pretty deep as well. I wanted to kind of be a Texas.
Texas Final Four.
Texas affair, man. Just
dumb
old Texas, right? But I'm going with the Longhorns. So it looks like we have a clean sweep on that matchup as well. I think that's going to be a great game. And the way y'all spoke about it, it sounds a lot like what I was saying with Florida Atlantic, Tennessee. Man, it's going to be about size in this game. And Texas is a big team. Big team. Freddie Airmail says, imagine Texas getting both A&M and Houston in their region and not getting to play either one of them. I mean, yeah, think about that, right? I think
Texas and Texas A&M to play. I think that would have been like
that's what I really wanted to. Yeah. I had that on one of my brackets too. All right, so let's go to the true Cinderella over here. We've got Creighton versus Princeton. So I'm gonna just preference this. I think people underestimate Ivy League basketball. It's been one of those leagues that's quietly been very competitive. The thing that I like about Princeton is they play an all-around game. They can shoot, they can attack the rim, they can defend. They seem like something that you don't see too much often in basketball in general is a complete team. But this Creighton team, when they get out the gate, they go right. But they're also but I think I wrote in my notes somewhere they're not a high-scoring team either. So I think that's what's going to be interesting about this matchup is, Creighton can run the floor. They're not a high-scoring team. Princeton, they can put up points. So obviously the question is, where are we landing in this matchup? Who do y'all think takes it? What is going to be the keys to this matchup?
Ooh, it's a tough one in my opinion. I would like to see Princeton move on. Just the story of Princeton, the Fighting Carltons. I would hear people call them the Fighting Carltons. So, but I think Creighton is probably one of the most prepared teams. I had them playing Bama in the next round. That probably being Bama's scary opponent outside Arizona, which knocked out. But I would like to say Princeton, but I think they had run ins here. I think I'm going with Creighton. I think they're ready and they're battle tested. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually on the other side with this one. I think Princeton gets one more dance out of this tournament, only because, like you said, they are a smart team. They're very well-rounded, and they've had a week to prepare. That's something a lot of people have forgotten. This isn't like the first couple rounds where you playing back-to-back. They had a whole week off to think about their matchup, strategize, and use that Ivy League education to come up with a game plan.
Yeah.
And they are led by a couple juniors and seniors who have come so far with that chip, and they want to make a lasting impression on the nation.
No, these are great points. I think I want to see Princeton. I really do. But I might have to agree with Rod here. I think the road stops here. I think Creighton pulls a Big East on them. They ball out. They get into that Elite Eight. I don't think Creighton goes beyond the Elite Eight. It almost seems like the perfect matchup for them. Yeah. But I think it ends here for Princeton. But it's going to be a great game, though. I don't think it's going to be a blowout at all. I think it's going to be neck and neck. But yeah, man, look, we did what we said we were going to do for the fans. We came in here, we gave an analysis, and most importantly, this is Fan Controlled Sports, so we let the fans talk. And of course, shout out to Evil Death in chat. We have Freddie Airmail in the chat. Shout out to, again, I don't know if it's Dick Wild or Dick Willie, whichever one it is. Shout out to you. We had KCID, him, or them. We had a lot of good fans in the chat today. Really enjoyed the input. Hey, y'all, look, enjoy the tournament, the game. I mean, at least according to my clock, Kansas State, Michigan State, they tip off in about 2 minutes here. So feel free, fans, tweet at us on Twitter, at Fan Controlled on Twitter. Follow me, your host, Fan Controlled Lei on Instagram. Shoot me a message, whatever your picks are. But enjoy the Sweet 16 and good night from Fan Controlled Sports and Entertainment. This has been the Sweet 16 Pick Show.